The Vatican Code follows our Amazon book entitled A New American Covenant. The code is about how and why Pope St. John Paul was assassinated 3 times by the same people. The first was with intent by the KGB when I was sent by the Greek Orthodox Archbishop who visited our church in Dallas, sent to study the old country, which led me in 1980 to Pristina, Bosnia, close to the day and hour John Paul was shot a year later in Rome. Staying at the government hotel, the CNN MSNBC style news aired every evening propaganda cartoons on TV aimed at the new pope describing how they would impeach or assassinate him. My Orthodox are not real keen on Roman Catholics, but this was unacceptable television, so I began turning the tables, as Jesus would have done, against the KGB in the bar at night, acting like John Denver in the movie Oh God. So they sent me out of old Yugoslavia to Austria with Get Out, Go the Way of the Brits, in reference to the logo on the back of my sweatshirt the local Orthodox gave me from their soccer coach. Then came the simultaneous assassinations of the Pope and his ally, President Reagan, in '81. Next was the replay of Fatima in 1986, when PJP escaped the crowds of Auckland and drove with a buddy on a limo tour of the South Island, stopping for an hour in the backyard of a little closed church outside of Christchurch, where I was invited by a stranger lady to walk half a mile, sit half an hour, and meet and greet the Pope, with a dozen others who showed up to sit in the grass behind us one clear summer blue day. She was Senator Byrd's personal secretary from Virginia. Now, near the end of his personal story talk of Poland and Rome came the Fatima Event, when a row of 7 black ships looking like clouds came around the rim of the coastal volcanic cone coming straight to us. He stopped speaking and turned to watch and wait. She and I sat at his feet casually in the yard and saw them first over his shoulder. When they arrived 5 to 10 minutes later, we were baptized with barrels of water seemingly falling from
heaven. Falling from heaven.
Everyone behind us ran and disappeared, but we stayed sitting in the baptismal rain, and they watched from under a great umbrella. Together, the 4 of us. Neither of us budged. The event made no sense to me until decades later. I pieced together the miracle he and President Reagan achieved with President Gorbachev in fulfilling the so-called Portugal event of Fatima, of consecrating Russia out of the KGB and back to orthodoxy. Well, the missing piece was the day President Reagan to-be in 1979 dropped in a helicopter to Moody Coliseum at SMU to give us a very enlightening talk about his epiphany, so to speak, about the Orthodox Catholic Polish Patriot, who was being sent to Rome to be a Catholic Pope. He told us that with this guy, he could make some headway with the Russians. Later I realized from my twin encounters with both that John Paul and Ronald Reagan had been called on a mission by God to do the work of the Father. So this was the reason behind my building a concert-type mission park dedicated to the Polish Pope, and then build an Orthodox reading room and outdoor cafe with Michelangelo-type art sculptures, and a Glenn Beck meetup club, and an international student TV cooking show. It was in recognition of the symbolic message of the previous events over the decades. Building these things were just normal and incidental behavior for me because it models the traditions of the generations of my father. which was to build in order to do good works. So doing good works was the high path and the better way to walk. Most cowboy movies and Disney shows were about the nature and calling of doing good works, for goodness sakes. Like raising a barn with the neighbors when they needed some help. So none of it was necessarily for reward or profits, which in this day and time is a disadvantage, since good works today are part of a socio-religious government paradigm. Nevertheless, a communication built up from these works between me and the Pope, to the extent that I would respond to the third assassination against him. Now, it all began in 2003 while teaching English in Spain. I decided enough was enough. I was going to Rome to see the Pope. I knew he would remember me and Senator Byrd's secretary at the Fatima event we shared together. But I was going to tell him he could die and peacefully head out to Valhalla as my father had done when his time of calling came. The reason for this was how the KGB UN George Soros controlled Vatican was rolling him out in his stroller before the world cameras in a state of complete dystopia, head fallen to the side, slobbering and mumbling. I asked, why did they do this to him? Finally, I realized it was part of the assassination. Not of the Pope, but also his office. They couldn't get him, but they could get the other. It was why Benedict tossed the area into the sky and walked away. And it's why Argentine Jesuit mafia member Francisco fits so well with the crime family that now owns the Vatican. Of course, Pope Francis's mind, joining the Vatican to the UN is like some Star Wars event for social justice, and the Catholic Church finally reaches its goal of universalism. And slave trading children into Moorish camps so Sodom could rule again and kiss the Koran hello and bring paradise to all the world, except for the kids, of course. Celibate boys would be led into the holy priesthood in a life of penance, serving the Mother of God, but without ever holding a girl or a wife in their arms, and probably not even being held by their mothers. So 2 mules for Sister Sarah doesn't make up for it when all the efficacy of the church is gone, and a cabal of evil owns it from the outside in. So it's no wonder when I was told by the Pope out of thin air to forget going to Rome from Spain, instead go to San Pedro's in Caracas, Venezuela, South America, and from there continue your journey. And journey it did begin with 1 marriage and 2 engagements and 3 presidential families in Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia. And during the wedding in Venezuela, it was announced during the cutting of our cake by her brother-in-law, "The Pope has died, the Pope has died." I smiled and thought, how serendipity is life. So these are some of the stories in the first and second book on Amazon, A New American Covenant and The Vatican Code by Rance DeWitt.